calling the redistricting board meeting into meeting status. My name is Rich Johnson. I'm the chair. We're going to first do a roll call. To my left.
Matt Bergen.
Pat Richardson.
To my right.
Paul Thompson.
Lance Johnson.
Okay, we got roll call. We have quorum. We can go. We have more than three or greater. So we got an agenda. I don't know if you guys looked at the agenda. It's pretty much IT. Eric's going to go over questions and from us and maybe some more things you may have been able to do for us. We're also, looks like we're going to have our own after IT. We're going to have discussions amongst ourselves on data, where we're going to go, which data set. I did notice that looks like the lawyers, county attorney, looks like you have pinned down some of the open forum where we're going to be doing. That's the only changes I saw. A lot of times they had like two places. Now we have exactly where we're going to go. So that's what I saw as a change. Anybody have any questions on the agenda?
I move approval of the agenda.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. No nays. The ayes have it. Motion carries. Next is the meeting minutes. I looked at them. They have us starting at 5:30. That's good. So other than that, the content is all there. Anybody have any questions, additions, changes?
No, I move to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Motion carries because there's no one else saying nay. All right, let's do the agenda. Mr. IT, Eric. So what do you have to show us?
I personally don't have that much new. I did let you know that we were able to get the updated registered voter data as of, I think I updated that for you the previous Friday, and that was that week's export from the election board, as well as the state came through with the revised numbers. Essentially, I think Maryland is one of, I read 9 states where the law requires that the state amend the census numbers based on putting prisoners at their home address, I guess, rather than where they are incarcerated. And so that was done relatively quickly and was able to get those numbers updated for you by that Friday as well. So all three data sets, total population over 18, and registered voters are as up to date and correct as they can be made and are supposed to be. Other than that, I'm here to take your questions on the map, using the map, on the data. I know you have wanted some questions about the margin of error on the numbers and that sort of thing, as well as if the board wanted to do some live changes on the map if necessary. So the rest is really up to you.
Okay, I've got questions. I'm sure everyone else has questions. I guess one of the things that we want to find out, even Dr. Richards, you had a question on the accuracy of the data,
I did. Two things. One was the margin of error. So I was wondering if census data provide a margin of error. And my second question may not be for you, but I would like to know, when is the last possible date that potential voters can register to vote?
I don't know the answer to that.
We can look that up and get it for you.
Okay.
Okay. As to the margin of error, so I did. This has made me do a lot of research with the Census Bureau to be able to try to answer these questions. So what I have found is that the census only publishes margin of error data in conjunction with what they call the ACS, the American Community Survey, which is a separate item from the actual 10-year census, where they try to count every single person. They also, in conjunction with that, on different years, they do this American Community Survey, ACS, which is gives, and they do, it's a statistical sample of the population that lets them fill in extra information, like how much they make, how much their commute time is, all that extra information. And when they publish that ACS data, that is when they publish the margin of error data for both those numbers and the population data. From what I was able to find, they did not publish margin of error data with this initial first run 10-year census data set. They are scheduled to release the 2020 ACS data set September 23rd. That being said, that ACS data set does not go down to the block level, it only goes down to the tract level. There are only 17 census tracts within the St. Mary's County. So bottom line, from what I've been able to find, there is no way to provide you an exact margin of error for every single block. At the tract level, looking at the 2019 data, tracts averaged a margin of error of between about 5 and 10%. So basically the census says we are 90% confident that the true population resides within 5% below or above the number that we publish, or up to 10%. It varies from tract to tract. So I think you could safely, in your minds, if you want to know a general margin of error for these numbers, I would say 5 to 10% on either side. It's just a good thing to keep in your head if you want to think about it. But there's no way to provide at this level of detail exact numbers because they don't publish them. And even the more broad margin of error numbers have yet to be published for this 2020 data set.
So, sounds like they don't have it yet. Okay. What else questions? So there's the census data, and included in that is the greater than 18. And that was one of the questions I had before. It's nice to look at, but if you were going to try to compare it to eligible voters, at least via age, you're missing the 18-year-olds, and the people that are 17 and still eligible because they'll be 18 on the general. So last
yeah.
I looked, you didn't know how to get that data, or?
So I did talk to election staff, and they said actually 16 is the age
16.
to be able to register. And so,
Well, register, but again, they can vote, provided that they're 18 on the general.
yes, but they can get themselves onto the rolls as
Okay.
soon as they turn
All right.
16. So yes, so keep in mind the difference between registered voters and the over 18, there's a 3-year gap there. Also keep in mind the census data, the Census Bureau target date for the numbers is April 1st, 2020. We're now 17 months past that. So you have, in addition to that 3-year gap of 16 to 19, you have an additional year and a half now on top of that of people aging into the registered voters that wouldn't be in the census data. You also have a year and a half of population increase
Right.
that would contribute to the registered voters number. Plus you have the margin of error of the Census Bureau estimates. So yes, there's some slop between those two numbers, definitely.
And the other data set that we're going to be looking at is the registered voters, which is the election folks here. I'm sure that's pretty accurate because it's pretty solid data, I would think. So,
Yeah, I was hoping they would be here to speak to that. I can't speak on their behalf.
I mean, you would think it would be pretty accurate because it's people actually writing down and
Yes.
doing it. So,
So are we speculating that even if we knew that total number, it would impact our numbers by more than maybe a 0.1% at the most?
I mean, depending on, like I was talking to you later, depending on what you choose, they're all going to track kind of the same.
Right.
But, the census data has everybody in there, people that are voters, people that are not eligible for voting, and people that are, underage. And so, anyway, to me, the to me, I think the one data set to really look at is the registered voters, because that's what we're doing here, is trying to balance the different county commissioner districts. Because, I mean, it's just not just the county commissioners, everyone else who runs for an election, too. So, to me, that's pretty accurate. I got more questions software-wise. Anyone else have any other, maybe data questions, or?
Did I just pick up that there's 3 years worth of data that's lost, or like that we're not accounting for here? Like 3 years of census data? What was the 3 years?
No,
You said
the 3 years, you have one set of numbers, which is population over 18.
Okay,
And registered voters consist of people who are can be over 16. So there's so you can't directly compare those two
It's hard to get to that data. set.
numbers.
Okay.
You may have, it may seem weird, but you can have places where there are more registered voters than people over the age of 18, even though that doesn't quite seem right, because there's an extra 3 years worth of people, of age of people that can be in the registered voters, because they can start at 16 and the census data starts at 19. So there's a 3-year gap, which can account for some of that discrepancy.
okay.
Right, you register when you get your driver's license, so that's what.
Okay.
I had a question about the website. Is there a way to reset?
Exactly, that's what I want to.
And I saw your email. I only returned to the office today and saw your email. Unfortunately, no. I looked in. There's no easy way that I can provide a simple reset button.
But Paul, he does have, it is like a save capability, because you can leave the software and go back in and your changes are still there.
I know, I was actually pleasantly surprised about that.
Yes.
But then
yeah.
I realized,
You're actually editing a database that is back saved, and you can switch computers. You can you can log out. You close it, whatever you want, and that data is still.
How are you supposed to
saved.
run through multiple scenarios if the one scenario you put in there gets stuck?
Well,
You have to actually manually
what you
move
want to
it
do
out?
first is record each district on, like, the overall population for each bar. Write that down. I have a spreadsheet over here with all that data, so that once you start moving things around, and let's say, well, I don't like this, I want to go back to the beginning. A lot of times, the census, they got these little areas you may miss, and you would look at your numbers and they're not jiving. So it's nice to know that your numbers are going to track once you grab all these different little things in the software.
So the only way to revert it back is to actually go
have
in
to
and
manually do it yourself.
move it back.
Manually select them and move
So
them back.
there's room for error
Yeah.
if you miss something.
There is some room
You get
for
these
error.
little round areas, and like, if you don't get them all, it's going to impact your overall numbers.
Question
There
question
are-
on that. Could you create a new seat as far as a username, and then you go back to your initially default settings? So in the event we don't have a back button, we don't have a reset button, could you issue just a new username, and then that would default to the original numbers and data set?
If you are concerned, I can in the background reset your data. So if you're concerned, like I've done so many different things, I just want to make sure I have a clean slate to try some things that I now want to move forward with, you can send me an email and I can go in and just reset your data. Rather than giving you a whole new login or anything.
Understood, yeah. So we do have that ability just to revert back to original data set, but you're going to
Yes,
lose any changes you
Write everything down. That's what I did, so.
I tried to do two things, and I know it's I know it's not the most it's not the best solution. I did try to give you two things to help with that. When you click on a block, you'll see your current district and your proposed district, so you can always click on a block and make sure, if there's a difference in the numbers here, it means you've made a change, and to go back to it, you would edit it back to what it says is current district. You can also, when you're editing, I would suggest using this tool, this amoeba shaped, that lets you, draw, and so you can get pretty accurate with your edges where you want to go and what you don't want to get, and then it will get anything in between, rather than trying to use the rectangle and multiple selecting.
Go through each little area.
Or that anything, and that'll let you, gives you more control. yeah, I realize it's not ideal. I would love to provide a reset button, but I can't, I can't
Is
figure
that
a
for
way
all
to.
the software, or is it because of where we're making the edits to?
It's really a limitation of the software. This is some off-the-shelf software, and while there is a fairly large ability to do some customization and provide tools and stuff, it's editing data in a web browser is still relatively new, and it just the tools for the editing haven't gotten robust enough to be able to set up that type of thing without doing coding, which is not available within this software. So it's it's a limitation of this particular browser-based web map. So.
And it may be important information as we're developing and going through these different potential scenarios, but when we go to lock in the final number, what is that methodology going to look like? Are we going to round table and you will manipulate, or how are we going to make these adjustments to lock in our final rev?
That's something we'll have to, you guys,
Guessing a PowerPoint, take a snapshot, put it in a PowerPoint.
yeah, there may just need to be a show and tell day where you've taken, if you have a preferred thing that you like, alignment that you would like to see, write down the numbers, take a screenshot that can get amalgamated. We can sort of do a show and tell, and then if I can sit here and we can, everybody wants to see, well, what if we did this? What if we did this? And it's just going to have to be a, sort of a collaborative effort by you all to come to some agreement, I guess. I don't know of a better way to, even with different software, I don't know how, there has to be some.
No, understood.
I can also access each one of your maps. So if, as a show and tell method, if you have a preferred method, you can get your map set up, and then I can simply open it here and show it to everybody.
Okay.
Might be a way to do it. But once again, you only have one, you can only set up your map one way. So.
That might be a workable procedure if each person has done a map. You show an individual's map, everyone gets to talk about pros and cons or issues, and then we go to the next one. So that might work.
And you can access each of our account over there, correct? So
Yes.
there you go. We got the nice little presentation. We can go from there. That's IT. Any more questions? I'm sure as we play with this stuff, we're going to get more questions from you. I'd still like to have a reset, but think about that. Reset would be nice. We're going to, I guess, go to the next of our agenda. I guess our own, well, we started doing that already, our own little talk amongst ourselves, where we want to go. And anybody want to go? I'll talk, you can talk. Doctor, we sort of, depending on what's set, you're going to pretty much get a lot of the same answers, I think. When you look at the percentages, I got a big spreadsheet. They look some are a little bit different than others. I saw what the original board did before us using the registered voters. They got pretty close. They did a pretty good job, so.
Well, I did have a suggestion. I wondered if maybe, in the interest of full transparency, that we determine whether we have agreement on one, based on what we've seen and what the guidelines are. Do we all agree that some adjustments are needed? And then the second question to me would be, we go through each of the different each of the three databases and talk about pros and cons of using each one, and hopefully eliminate or rule out and come to consensus on the database that we can all agree to. And that'll, in the course of that discussion, it will give us which districts do we think are going to require adjustment.
Well,
So
I can give you numbers right now. We can.
I think I have them, but I wondered if maybe for the purpose of our our meeting, that we should state that we do agree or we don't agree.
Correct.
On whether or not we need to make any changes. I mean, to me, it was kind of obvious, but I'm just one person.
So objectively, if we're following the advice that we were initially given, they say our standard deviation is going to be 10%. So that puts us, based off this latest data set, plus 5% is 29,915. The bottom 5% is 27,066. There are several of the districts that fall outside of those parameters, so I would say yes, that there are adjustments that need to be made. And then, again, referring back to the initial meeting, legal counsel advised that we use total population, and I would suspect, I will follow the advice of legal counsel.
So we want to maybe call up the legal counsel now, maybe discuss about the 10%, kind of target. Is it fixed in stone or law, or it's just a nice thing to do?
You all don't mind. I'm John Hauser, Assistant County Attorney.
Okay.
And refresher is that the goal for local and state and local council districts, the 10% deviation is pretty much required in congressional districts. When we talk about federal cases, it's a guideline at state and local ones. Once you get down to the local levels, the idea is that your your district should be substantially equal in population. 10% is a guideline. You can go above that for good reason. If you go below that for poor reason, courts can strike it out. But
Right.
It is a guideline. It is something to hew to, but if this commission sees a good and compelling reason to deviate from it, not to an extreme amount, but some
You just
wiggle
want to
room
make sure the law is in your side, so if someone comes, saying, hey, what did you guys do? You at least can argue, hey, it's within, precedence or something like that.
We're lawyers. We'll argue anything, but we're going to do our best.
Okay? So,
On the note, too, talking about total population, is that in terms of passing congressional muster, probably total population is the trend in congressional law, the safest measure to go by, but similar to this, do we have to go by 10%, or can we deviate from that? You can use and other states do use other population measurements rather than total population. You can do voting age population. You can do, as your predecessor board did, registered population. Some have attempted to do citizen voting age population, which I don't know if we even have the data to do
don't know.
that.
Sort of what we've been trying to get with the greater than 18.
I would, again, the idea is that once you pick the measuring stick, justify the reasons for doing so, see what public benefit will come from using that as the population metric to go by, and once you decide on that, just look for something that is substantially equal. And again, try to make the numbers as equal as possible, but if there's good reason to depart from them, you can do so. And if it goes too far out, we will probably raise a red flag and come up here and yell to go no further, or let me brief it and come back to you next week. Any other further questions at this time before I come back at the end?
Any questions for lawyer? No? Thank you.
Thank you all.
Do you want to pin down it now, or?
I guess the first thing I would look for is, are we all in agreement that changes are warranted?
Yeah, there's one particular district
Okay.
is
Yes.
out there.
So then we move to, let's look at each of the three databases and discuss pros and cons
Okay.
of each one.
Do we want to talk about the particular, District 4 is the problem child, at least I can see, when you compare it to District 2, both population and registered voters. So depending on what source you use and where you move it, you probably get a different answer, but at least from what I can see, it's got the most of everything, so probably need to take a look at that and see what we all can come up with. Like I said, the original board back did registered voters, and they got very close to the requirements, at least 10% if you want to talk about that. So
I could see why the board before us chose the path that they did, because their total registered voters was the most recent data that they had. They came in a couple years after the census, and so already with growth in the county, things start to change. So in their report, they're very clear about providing that rationale that was,
Similar to us, too, if you look at the data that the election folks have given to us, it's dated August 4th of 2021, the registered voters.
ours is recent,
Yeah, ours is very recent.
but theirs was, for the
Registered
group
voters.
before us, it was more, their voter registration
Than the other
was more
data.
recent than their census data. So they were looking at the most current data they had available,
Okay.
which.
I'm just saying the data we got, at least for ours, is
In our case, we have different scenario.
Right.
All of our data are very current.
yes.
If I may interject, the registered voter data in the map is even more current than when
Really?
the board presented
Do
to
you have the
you
date on it when, and I'm sure it was probably,
2 weeks ago.
I was just looking at a file that I had from prior meetings we had here. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's even,
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks.
And the census data, once again, is April 1st, 2020 is the target date for the census data. So you're about 17 months and some change difference between the two data sets this time around.
all right. Any IT, any other discussions? I don't think we're pinning down which days, say we'll look at them all, I guess, and see which ones get close to what we need, both population and registered voters. Any other questions or additions or?
Well, I think the only thing that, with the registered voters, it doesn't really, because you're not taking into account over the next 5, 6, 7 years as each county growth changes, the number of registered voters are going to go up, and they're going
Right,
to go
we're
up.
looking at population too. also.
Yeah, that's where probably, like I said, it's a really hard gauge, but 5 or 6 years from now, it's going to be a totally different, you don't know. I mean, you know that District 4 is going to continue to grow.
Oh, yeah.
Like, hotcakes, because that's where the base is, but, so, number of registered voters, I'd have to, like I said, I still haven't gotten the link to play around with the
That's
map.
questions you
Yeah, and I talked to him about it, I'm going to get that, but, so I haven't really got a chance to play with the registered voters versus the population to see where it lays out. I did see the ones that you put out, and it seemed pretty much kind of line up with the total population, but,
Yeah, I was going to say I was pleasantly surprised by that there weren't any real outliers that jumped out at me as far as registered voters versus total population.
yeah.
So, it's not like there's some big trade-off there. I
Right.
think it's, either one will probably end up with the same map.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? I think next on the agenda, Laura, I guess you want to go over the schedule. I think the only thing I saw change in there was the public forum. You've pinned down where we're going to have things.
Not quite.
Uh-oh.
Big question we have in front of you, and then a few more housekeeping matters. And again, John Hauser, Assistant County Attorney. So the nature of the public hearing is, given the resurgence in COVID, we do not know where we are going to be in the middle of November. And what we are thinking about and would like the redistricting board to consider to talk and not give a recommendation one, or we can talk about it, or I can ask any questions about what you think the ramifications might be, but to consider adding an additional public hearing. Reason being is that you are mandated to have 4 public hearings, 1 in each district. Our difficulty is that 3 of those are going to be in locations where we will not be able to set up, we don't think, remote access for people to call in or present virtually. That means they would be constricted to in-person presentations or pre-written comments, and that might mean that people who would otherwise be interested in attending will not, if we're dealing with capacity restrictions and social distancing, if we are still dealing with all that in 2 or 3 months, which I think at this time is a reasonable expectation. We very well may be. The idea we would ask the board to consider and to talk about is considering adding another meeting to be hosted here in the commissioner's room, where we do have the ability for remote access. We cannot do it in lieu of any of these meetings. We're required to have the 4 meetings, 1 in each district. We've got to keep it as it is. We are thinking about adding, or would wonder if the board would want to add a 5th to get the maximum amount of public input as possible.
catch the people that couldn't make the other meetings?
That's the thought, and the idea being they're either scared to come in person or just unable. If we have to have people coming in 6 feet distance apart, it could just take too much time.
Do you have any dates involved? Because we're going to have to balance it against, our schedule too.
So we do not have dates at this point. How I think we would do it, if the board is interested, we could begin clearing dates and working that out, and perhaps next meeting decide on something definite. The idea is just if the board wants us to consider it and wants us to go forward with it, we can,
What does everyone think about adding another, I guess, one here, so anybody who wants to attend can attend?
What does the fifth meeting here really do with showing up you got to show up at each one of those districts anyway.
Right, we're still going to do that in case, because of other COVID restrictions that are going around, that, we may be limited who can be there or who can attend. So this just gives, one more attempt for anyone that couldn't make one of the prior meetings to have their say. I mean, we could, Diane has something to say.
now it looks like, pardon me, I misspoke. It looks like we have pre-cleared the 23rd of November as a date that would be open, if that would work for this board.
23rd November.
Does it make sense to hit the two districts that would have a problem doing something teleremote first? So trying to get ahead of if a potential COVID thing breakout came out, trying to get to those 2 districts first, like earlier in the schedule maybe?
I think we probably got to keep to the schedule as is, because I do not think we have, right?
23rd November.
I do not think we have the ability for logistics and for notice. You did, the schedule that we have has been approved already. I do not think we have flexibility to change the 4 dates and locations that are here already.
But the locations that you're referring to, I'm not sure which 2 districts that is, but where are they on the schedule? If they're on the backside and we can't get to them because of COVID, what does that do for this whole redistricting to begin with? If we can't present and people don't have an opportunity to show up, you're saying that we have to do it, right? But if people can't be there, then what does that do for the overall finalization of this redistricting?
Right. Well, what happened, David Weiskopf, County Attorney, what happens is, obviously, there's 4 districts, and the one for this district will be held in this room. And when it's held in this room, it can be live, number 1. Number 2, people can call in and listen and also ask questions. People can submit, again, written comments in advance like they can do anywhere, and also a video if they want as well. So the thought process was, if we're in the first district or what have you, where we don't have that capability, what we would basically do would be to just let everybody come in and say their piece, but at the same time, we would be nervous that we would miss people, right? That people didn't come out because they were nervous about COVID. So maybe the meeting that we have here will be, over-attended, right, in terms of people calling in. So the thought process was to possibly set up this 5th meeting, and maybe we can take it back out, because maybe, you don't have any participation, or it seems like everybody's, said their piece. But we just, if we schedule it now, we can let everybody know that this is why we're doing it, and that if COVID does get bad, hey, you'll be able to have, if you didn't want to come out to the, firehouse up in Mechanicsville or wherever we're having it, you certainly can call in and still,
This would be like a catch-all meeting, like to kind of like for anybody
yes.
who
Because
missed
the
an
4 are
opportunity, give them a
required.
5th opportunity to
Right.
pretend-
The 4 are required that we have to do in each district. This 5th one would be the catch-all.
Okay.
And we might be able to take it back out, but, it's a lot easier to plan than not plan, right?
So I would say 23rd is what you're looking at in November.
Right, of course, that's, Thanksgiving
Yeah, I
week,
know.
I believe, right? Which,
It's hunting season too.
oh, well,
I did have one more question. So the first public hearing that's scheduled in this room is November 10th. Will people from all the other districts know that they can also call in to that meeting?
well, we'll certainly publicize it if it,
Yeah,
but
okay.
I believe it's been advertised that way, right? That it has been advertised that way, and certainly, I mean, just because we're having a meeting in the 1st district, if you're from the 3rd, you can, obviously you can still come to that one. It's just that we're trying to be convenient for everyone, but certainly, other people, other members can call into this, to the one that's here.
I think I would feel most comfortable if the public has more opportunity than less.
Right.
So,
Are we able to assess based off our already scheduled 4 meetings, I mean, if we have little to no turnout, would that push a requirement for a 5th? Or if they are well-attended and we have it set, we can make that decision based on how well-attended our 4
So, yeah, we
meetings
go
are?
with what we got and then see how the turnout is. And of course, the meeting here will be, they can call in if they want. And then from there, we can make a decision whether we need an extra.
But if we advertise it, then we're going to have it, right? Because you'd hate for somebody to say, well, I didn't go to the one in the 1st district because I was planning on coming to the 5th one, or, right? So, that's
Put
a
tentative.
concern.
Put tentative,
Tentative, if needed.
if needed,
If
if
we-
needed, yes.
We know what the COVID, if there are COVID restrictions, we know that. If there are none, and we have those meetings at the fire department and the libraries, then we would have given an opportunity. The issue to me is if there are, and there may or may not be,
Right.
COVID restrictions that would make it difficult for people
Right.
to come out or make them uncomfortable.
Right.
So I always like to think positively.
Right.
Let's say everything's under control by then, and we're not still climbing, advancing in COVID cases. We would know ahead of time.
Right. We could certainly list it as tentative based on the, attention that is given to this board and to this board's report or, recommendations. Right.
I do agree that if you put it in there, I think there's an expectation.
Then you have to have it, right, right.
Yeah.
Right. Since, if you're a history buff, right, since June 6th of 1215, right, the Chapter 39 of the Magna Carta gives everybody due process, right? And we carried that over here in America. And due process at its most basic is notice and opportunity to be heard, right? And so opportunity to be heard is a big one, and we would hate for you guys to do the work and then for somebody to take us to court because they felt like they didn't get their say on your proposed plan. So if the cost of democracy is one more meeting, then that's my suggestion, right?
So the calendar, as it was initially set out, has 11:30 is meeting vote ? And then 12:07 meeting if needed vote ? Could we make that 11:30 our additional and then propose to make the final vote on 12:07 per the initial calendar? Because it seems like 11:30 is almost like a floater meeting.
Well, those meetings, I think, are not public, well, they're public meetings, but they weren't public hearings. Those meetings are for you guys to deliberate and,
So if we made 11:30 the 5th public hearing and then propose that we make our final vote on 12:07,
That's before you go to the commissioners. That's your meetings to meet, to go over any changes.
Just go to microphone.
Sorry.
come on, Diane.
sorry.
Sorry, Amy. Okay, so the meeting that you have on the 30th and the 7th is for you to discuss anything that you've heard at the public hearings, then to take back to before you go to the commissioners with your final report.
Okay.
So, and because we have to have the meeting open for 7 days for public comment.
Understood.
So that gives us, that's why those meetings are set that way. It just gives you the opportunity before the 14th.
Makes sense. So then 23rd is either that or prior to 11/8.
And let me just let you know that I looked at the meeting calendar before we had this meeting. There are not very many spaces in this room available. This is almost every night that there's a meeting in this, except for Fridays,
Okay.
With good reason.
with good reason.
Can we bounce against our own schedules before we commit on the 23rd? It is near Thanksgiving and other things. I don't know what I may already have on my calendar. We can, I guess, all give our answers to you.
We can discuss it next meeting. When's the next meeting?
Next week.
Next week,
That's
right?
another-
Next Tuesday. It's the
Next
week from
Tuesday's
today.
enough time.
Okay,
To
so-
certainly discuss it.
Look at the 23rd in your calendars, see if it looks workable for the extra meeting. Okay,
All right.
so,
And the other housekeeping we had as
Other
well was,
housekeeping.
that's actually a dovetail right into the other one. We do have 2 meetings scheduled for next week, on the 21st and the 23rd. Does the board right now anticipate needing both of those dates?
the Thursday, I'm going to have to call in. So you'll be the gavel man for co-chair,
I will be out of state.
out of state. So I can call in, he's out of state. We still have,
I have a medical appointment in Bethesda.
now by
Starting at
Zoom, does that
11:30.
count as a
You'll still
quorum?
have quorum if you're
Okay,
doing
so
virtually.
I plan on calling in. You're around?
Yes.
Okay, so 1, 2,
I'm here.
yeah, so,
And I will be dialed in, but I just don't know if I'll be able to get from Bethesda.
so we at least have a quorum here, because I'll call in on that Thursday.
And I can more easily support the 21st if there was a decision between the two. I can easily support the 21st. I'm not sure I could support the 23rd.
I think we've got them both set down. We're planning on going. We just want to make sure and confirm before we send out staffing calls and tell people plan
Yeah, I
on
mean,
staying
we'll
here.
have
Do
enough-
you all want both?
We'll have a
keep
quorum
both
for
dates?
Thursday.
Okay.
I'll be here physically Tuesday of next week.
And the next one is, in light of that, do you anticipate needing any other personnel from the county present to ask questions of, get further information from at either of those meetings from?
The election folks, because we
Got
did
it.
have some questions today about accuracy of registered voters and data, so,
Okay. You'll make sure they're present?
and IT, of course, because we always have questions for you.
Do you anticipate at the next meeting wanting to show your individual maps, just for my planning purposes?
We could try that. I'm sure we'll be playing with the software somewhere. Are there any changes? When I went into your software recently, I saw there was 2 layers of the same name. And now I went to it, now it looks like it's back to the original settings. I don't know if that's a
I made no changes.
Okay.
Perhaps it was just a
quirk.
browser glitch.
Software thing?
A software
Okay.
thing.
IT and
when-
election board, we can,
Okay, yes.
When you edit the layer, it may add a second entity in the layer list.
Yeah.
I'll have to double check
Yeah, I
that.
did before I just came in, it had 2 of the identical layers, so I don't know what that was. And
If
I
that
looked at
happens
it here.
again, you can send me a screenshot.
Okay, I can do that. Take a snapshot.
Eric, at your convenience, would you mind hitting the reset button on my map so that way I can start with a fresh data set?
Absolutely. I can do that tomorrow morning.
Thanks, sir. I appreciate you.
anyone outside county government, experts or anything else, perceive any need to go for any sort of fact or opinion witnesses that you might be able to ask questions of or guide you in the decision?
Anybody?
I did have a question on that. In the past, has there been any pushback from the public based off the direction that previous boards have taken that we should be aware of and best postured to answer questions or potentially avoid should, in past years, people take issue with, a direction that the board has gone?
The best answer I can give you on that one is that the last redistricting board was not sued. That's the best I can give you on that one. I can look into it. I don't know how much guidance we give or if it'll be
Understood.
helpful. If the question is, do you need, say, an academic, a professor saying, just to give you an example, a quote-unquote expert opinion on this is the proper voting or population metric to use, this would be the best way the district could be drawn and best practices. At this point, do not believe that would be required of this board. It's a citizens board, that you all have the ability and the powers to do that on your own. Again, so long as you're guided by good faith and a rational, reasonable interpretations of the data presented in front of you. But if you all feel that is necessary to do your job to the utmost and to serve the people of the county, we can investigate and see who we might be able to uncover to help guide those decisions if you perceive a need or a requirement for that.
Okay. Anybody else have any?
We kind of, in the section B of the information sharing, we sort of jumped over the third question on there, was whether we felt that all of which districts needed to be adjusted. I don't think we ever talked about that at all.
I mentioned some, looks like District 4 is probably, and 2, when you compare them to 2, the percentages are off. So, when you compare, it's adjoining county commissioner districts. I have a spreadsheet over here, I looked at it. See, 4, so, see, it butts up against 1 and 2, so 2 is the big one that pops out. compared to District 4. District 1 looks quite good. It's pretty close to the 10%. So,
Okay.
and then we were discussing, depending on what database you use, whether total census or registered voters, you sort of get some of the same thing going on.
I guess from my standpoint, when I kind of worked on the map a little bit, I had myself changing all of the districts slightly.
Yeah.
Trying to maintain them as they are as much as possible, but because of the population changes, District 1 needed to grow a little bit,
Sure.
which of course takes from District 2,
Correct.
which then means we have to grow District 2, which means we take from 4.
And 4 is growing.
And
4 is going to continue to grow.
Correct.
right, so 2 is going, but then 1, I'm sure if anyone has an opinion on the lack of contiguousness of 1. I mean, I know no one goes by water anymore, but it's just kind of broken up oddly in my mind, I think. I'm just, like Dr. Richardson was saying, just trying to kind of put our thought process out there of
Broken up
why we're
because of-
starting to do these things.
You think broken up because of the Great Mills area? Because
I think it's the St. Mary's River is the boundary, is what breaks it up.
It's on both sides.
yeah, it's on both sides of the river.
But just, right. But I mean, that 4 comes into it. So I guess when I'm looking at the map, I'm seeing opportunities to sort of, because 4 is going to have to shrink, to try to kind of make 1 a little bit more normal.
Correct.
We're all about making things as rectangular as possible on our triangular map, right? So,
Well, I did a similar thing to what you just described. At first, I looked at the total population and then made an assumption that each district should have 25% of the total population, which would require quite a few moves. And then I came back to that and looked at it from a more philosophical standpoint and thought, I think we have to make adjustments with the ones where there is a large imbalance, but I would be okay not touching the others. So when I looked at the percentage of population that each commissioner district and school board member district contributes, District 4 contributes 29%, District 1, 26%, District 3, 23%, and District 2, 22%. So the 22% versus the 29% to me was such a large gap that I felt like we probably would want to do something with those 2 districts. I'm always sensitive to people, disruptions that occur in people's lives and always trying to keep things as relatively non-disruptive as possible. So I felt like, depending on what the rest of the board members felt, I would be comfortable only adjusting in those 2, unless someone else has an argument as to, wanting to do something with either of the other 2 districts,
The 2, you meaning 4 and 2?
4 and 2.
Yeah.
So similar to Dr. Richardson, I sort of have taken, as I've made these multiple drafts, the Occam's razor approach, where we just keep it simple, meet the parameters. Those 2 intersect with each other. 4 is beyond the deviation, 2 is below the deviation.
Right.
Balance them between the 2 and keep 1 and 3 as they exist today based off the data set provided, because they meet the parameters that have been laid in front of us.
Just got to figure what you're going to grab and move.
Yeah, I guess I would say another motivation I had when looking at the map was trying to be sensitive to visual boundaries, 235, Route 4. And then I think I think it just gets difficult. It gets kind of tricky when you're in that middle area of Wildwood and Calif, because obviously we could see Wildwood was sort of maintained as a all-in-one district, right? I mean, it's, as a community, they're a group. There are other communities like that on the map as well. I think it's just going to be challenging to try to balance this out without getting too crazy.
I think that's, anybody else have any other, I guess we're going to be playing around with the software some more and hopefully making some screenshots and you can put them up on your computer. We can start discussing our different,
If I may, Mr. Johnson, Diane, you wanted to?
I just wanted to say, if you all have spreadsheets and things that you'd like to share with each other or with the public, we can put those in board docs. If you would send
I
those
got a
to
big one.
Sharon, she can load those into board docs so that the citizens and you all can like see each other's
Right.
before
This
you
is-
come to a meeting.
what I have here is basically prior data 2010, then I got the latest data dump that is on here. And I basically have, between the population greater than 18 and the registered voters, I've got, of course, there's an average for each one. And then I also have, like sort of like a tolerance for each one to be within to meet that 10%. And also what the actual percentage is for adjacent districts. And that's where you can see that 4 kind of like stands out pretty much.
We just wanted you to know that
Sure.
that's available if you'd
I
like
can-
to use it.
I can send it to you and you can disseminate so that we all have it. It's auto.
Make sure you copy Sharon because I'm out of town next week, so.
Oh, I'll
Okay.
copy share.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then one final thing, and I promise it will be short. Dr. Richardson, earlier this evening, you asked what the deadlines were for voters to register this coming cycle. They are June 7th for the primary and October 18th for the general, although Maryland does now, I believe effective as of the last cycle, allow for October 18th
18th,
for the general.
general.
Although Maryland does now allow same-day voter registration on Election Day as well.
The reason for that question was when I looked at that third database, the total registered voters, I had a concern that that could change, and it could change dramatically even between now and the deadline for registering. And then when Mr. Johnson mentioned,
Which
you know,
Johnson?
the other Mr. Johnson, the Mr. Lance Johnson mentioned, we really have to look at this as this is 10 years.
Sure.
So when you then add in how much things can change over that time, my concern with the registered voters section, while it worked well for the group before us, I felt may not work as well for this group, given that we have more current data on the census, because it will fluctuate and it could actually fluctuate. If there's a high interest election coming up, sometimes that increases voter participation.
If I could speak to that, I did speak with election staff today, and they did say the registered voters changes on a daily basis. And even in the 2 weeks since the data that is now in this map, I believe the rolls have changed by around 100 people just in 2 weeks. So to give you an indication of how much that registered voter number fluctuates and changes, so.
Yeah, I have a feeling that 4 is always going to be lopsided no matter what we do.
Yes.
Because we could balance this out today, but by next year, 4 is going to skyrocket again, and it's going to be above all other 3 districts. So
I
there's
think
no way to count the factor that in, because it's just we just have to deal with the numbers we have today, but
That's what I was going to say, is we're stuck with the numbers we
Yeah.
have. You can't really predict, and I don't think we should be predicting what the future is
Yeah.
going to be.
All right. Any further questions, just let us know. But
Okay.
see you all next week.
Thanks, sir.
Any other discussions, additions?
I have one more thing to say, if nobody
Okay.
else is. Just a reminder that when you're in the map and zoom in sufficiently, each block is labeled with a number. That is the total population number. Once the board comes to a decision on what metric you are using,
You can
I can
change
make
it.
sure
Right.
that that is changed for everybody. In the meantime, if you would like a different number up there for your personal map, once again, you can let me know, and I can make that change
Okay.
for you. So,
Was anybody against using total population or had an argument why there was another data set that would be best
We're
served
looking at
to
all of
focus
them.
on?
I mean, greater than 18, I don't think gives us really much because you're missing that chunk.
When I looked at the percentages, I looked at all three databases, and I only rounded to whole numbers.
Yeah.
But the four districts still remain in the same order.
Sure.
So regardless of which one we used, we're still dealing with the same pattern.
Right, good example of, 4 to 2, when you compare District 4 to 2, it's like 26.5% for population. For registered voters, it's 18.66% different. So you still, different in both whatever you look at or use. So whether you push the population around to try to equal the data or the registered voters.
I only ask because as we go through and sort of draft these potential, new redistricting lines, there are different blocks that have different ratios of, based off total population, approximate percentage is greater than 18, and then of that, who are registered. For instance, it doesn't tell me which block I'm in, the Newton Run block. There's population grade 18 is 454, and of that 454, 457, and there's 457 registered voters, but if I go to a different block, those relationship and deltas vary by block.
Sure.
So if the sooner we, and I'm open to anything and any ideas, but the sooner we identify what data set we're going to use, the more we can dig deep into our draft maps, if you will. I just don't want to, if I were to focus simply on total population and then we decide to go with a different data set, they may change and completely throw off all the previous drafts that I did too, and all the consideration that was taken based off changing data sets. So if we're proposing to bring draft maps, if you will, it's almost imperative that we identify what data set we're going to use, and if anybody's opposed to using total population.
I'm not opposed to using total population.
Either am
I was leaning towards total population anyway, because the registered thing could change, but.
True.
Whatever the lawyer tells me to do is usually what I do, or recommends, I should say.
But I would agree. I was intending to use total population as well. That's what I was, and just sort of, but then back checking on the other
Yeah, you-
two, just to make sure we weren't creating
And
some
like I
sort of
said,
outlier.
if you look at the other numbers, they sort of track
Right.
too.
Perfect.
I guess we'll concentrate on population, and of course, spot check the other stuff's how it goes, but I think you can still get the same answer that you want. And like my other Johnson over here said, District 4, particularly Exeter Park, keeps growing. So, are we trying to do something that's gonna, last for 10 years, or, we can do the best we can. But the only thing I can think of, possible sharing that District 4 where it's really going to blow up between the different districts is one thing. That's one thing you could do. But definitely District 4 and 2 is your problem child.
That's your meat and potatoes.
That's your meat and potatoes. Yep. So I will send this spreadsheet to you and your cohort, and they can disseminate, look at it. You probably already have it. You probably generate your own, so anyway. Anything else to go on, discuss, plan?
Or do you want that in board docs? So the public can see that also? That's what we're asking. If
It's open meeting, so it's open information.
Okay,
You
that's
can-
all because that we can share it that
Sure, you
way
can
also. And that's what we just needed to find out if that's the way you want it in there.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to,
Motion to adjourn, I move that we adjourn.
any second?
Second that.
All those in favor to adjourn, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Meeting over.